Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of The Last Library on the Left. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. We're a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
Today's episode, we will be covering The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was a 2020 release on Netflix, created by Mike Flanagan, who also did The Haunting of Hill House.
And it was inspired by Turn of the Screw by Henry James. It has a reoccurring cast from Haunting of Hill House, so you'll probably recognize quite a few of these names. We have Victoria Pedretti, who plays Danny, Amelia Eve, who plays Jamie, Kate Siegel, who plays Viola, Oliver Jackson Cohen, who plays Peter, Amelia B. Smith, who plays Flora, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, who plays Miles, Henry Thomas, playing Uncle Henry, Rahul Kohli, playing Owen, Tahira Sharif, playing Miss Jessel, Tania Miller, who plays Hannah, Katie Parker, who plays Perdita, and Carla Gugino, who plays future Jamie.
Hey.
Okay. You're fine.
Wow, I never heard him be mad at you before.
Yeah, he does not. I mean, I get it, but he does not like it.
I just want to make a quick note before we even get into this. We have recorded this episode a couple times. And because of mic issues and length issues, this is, I think, our third time giving it a go.
Is it?
Yeah, because we tried with Nadine.
Right. And I revealed some stuff that was a little upsetting for her. So
sorry, Nay.
Whoops.
Then the second one didn't record well.
Oh, God, that was terrible.
Yeah, and that was a good recording. And I wish that we could, piece in the part where I revealed to you that Henry Thomas was the little boy from E.T. because Sadina was so, shocked. She was shooketh.
It blew my freaking mind, and it took me a bit to move past it, actually. Maybe it's better that we save that recording. Y'all, that recording was going to have to be split into 2 parts. We're going to try to do better this time.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start off again by saying how much I love that Victoria Pedretti returned for this. I have a very big crush on her. I think she's so cute. I love all the characters she plays. She was in You on Netflix, and she was a psycho, and I loved her. So to see her return as Danny was really awesome. And also Oliver Jackson Cohen, just yum.
Yeah, our friend M, she understands that he was a toxic character, but forgave a lot of what he did because partly his accent, which bravo, sir.
Right.
Oh, if we're going to talk about people who stood out, then we got to talk about Rahul Kohli.
We're going to go through the whole cast because Tania Miller.
Yes. Well, Rahul Kohli was, I guess, my Jackson Cohen because I couldn't stop texting people about how distracting he was in the scenes. Yeah. That was unnecessary, sir, but also you're so handsome.
Yeah.
And Tania Miller, you took our breath away and you broke our hearts, and we'll get more into that, but this is such a standout cast.
The casting, just like Hill House, was phenomenal. I can't say enough about everyone and all of their roles that they played because I just loved them so much.
Well, yeah, we clearly can't say enough because we did 2 hours of it last time we recorded this.
Great cast. Before we get into the actual summary and going into what we feel about it, when I first watched Bly Manor, I hated it. I told you, I didn't like it. I was like, it's stupid. But then someone told me to watch it and think of it as a love story. And we'll go back to this at the end, but I watched it thinking of it as a love story, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. And I just want to preface that by saying if you didn't like it, just go back and watch it. Just and think of that concept of it being a love story. Actually, many love stories.
Yes.
And I think you'll really, really enjoy it. Now, we begin with this older lady who's actually our narrator, and she's telling us the story of Bly and its inhabitants. Each episode gives us backstory and major plot, with the exception of the first episode, which is, of course, introductory. And let's just dive right on in with the first episode.
Yeah.
So, in the first episode, we meet most of the major characters. We meet Danny. She's in London. She's tried out for a position as an au pair, and she gets it. We meet Uncle Henry, who's given her the job after a very uncomfortable interview.
That was a good freaking scene, though.
We also see that Dani is very clearly haunted. It looks like she's haunting herself. And we also get to meet the staff and the kids who live in Bly Manor. And the major plot that happens in episode 1 is not only that we get to see like a lot of the different characters' personalities, but the kids who kind of come off creepy. They lock Dani in a closet.
Okay, that's a little further. So, yes, Flora comes off a little creepy, but Flora is not... We disagree about Flora.
We do. We disagree about Flora for a long time.
Yes, for a long time. I always thought Miles was a bit of a creep.
Yeah. It wasn't until I watched Bly Manor the second time where I was like, well, I guess Flora's not that bad. But when I first watched, I was like, man, that little girl is too creepy. So when we get in and we meet all these characters, one of the things that I want to say is that we meet Hannah, and right off the bat, she seems sort of, I don't want to say heartbroken, but...
She looks disconnected from reality.
Yeah, disconnected. That's a really good word. And she kind of has to like shake herself and get back into the moment of introducing herself and the kids and talking to Dani. And Dani comes off kind of meek almost, and we see that she has an encounter with an image she sees in a car.
You know, I wouldn't say that she comes off meek. I would say that she comes off easily shaken.
Yes, easily shaken.
Because she wasn't meek in her interview where...
No, she wasn't. She was very strong.
She was. Yeah. And she definitely turned a lot of things around on him because he was kind of a dick through most of the interview. Yeah. Turned his words against him. Yeah. But she was easily shaken. Things that you wouldn't think would set her off.
Yeah. There were a couple times when in the interview, when she's talking to her mom, or when she's in the house with the kids, where you can see she's got tears in her eyes almost. Yeah. And she's fighting them back, and she's like, I've got to be strong. Like, you can tell she's really having those inner battle, which, again, love her. Yeah. So, yeah, she's not meek. Very much, like you said, easily shaken, but very much a strong female character.
Yeah, I think I wrote down in my notes that I thought maybe she was unstable, which is why I thought she was an unreliable narrator from the beginning. Because, yeah, she really did. She seemed like every little thing would set her off.
Yeah. It really seemed like even when she was in the interview and she was talking to Henry and he asked her why
what's the catch?
Yeah, what's the catch? You could tell she's visibly upset when he asks her that, and then she turns it on him, and she's the bad bitch that she is. Just very small things really bother her.
Well, and she's honest, too, about her previous job in the States as a teacher. Yeah. She says that she always wanted to work with children, but that 30 was too much. Yeah. And she thought 2 would work better for her. I wrote in my notes, she likes children, but is she easily upset by them? I thought the kids were something about her trauma.
Clearly, you read more into this than I did, because I was just like...
I mean, don't I always? And then doesn't that always backfire?
You're the sleuth when it comes to like I'm horror.
An idiot. I feel like that's what everybody says. They're like, "Oh, you're so smart," and I'm like, "But am I really? Am I?"
I mean, when you talk, listen. I self-profess that when it comes to movie watching and reading stories, I kind of let it guide me where it goes. So I'm not smart when it comes to that stuff. You at least have your theories, and so I'm just like, let's see where the journey leads.
Okay, real quick theories. Can we just talk about how Nadine had it figured out before the first episode was done? And she's texting me, and I was like, what? Why?
Yes.
Why? And talk about a little shit that's too smart. Like, what?
I mean, for real, because a lot of the things that happened here, I didn't catch them until they were revealed. And you had an idea, and she just, right off the bat, with the exception of Hannah.
Yeah, which was weird, because I thought Hannah was the most obvious one.
Yeah. So that one kind of like, okay, Nadine.
Right? Like, how did you miss that? But man, she had literally every big reveal my baby sister Nadine had down by the end of the first episode.
Yeah, she's so intuitive or something. Intuitive? I don't know. She knew it.
Yeah. Apparently our mom would not watch procedurals with her because Nadine would reveal the bad guy before the first commercial.
Oh yeah, I couldn't watch a movie with her then. Sorry, Nadine. So we get into meeting the staff, which Rahul Kohli, let me go into his character name, Owen.
Right.
Owen, he's the house cook. He doesn't live on the premises because he takes care of his mom. Of course, there's Hannah. She's the, I don't want to say she's a housekeeper, because she's not.
Yeah, and she's not the groundskeeper either. No. That's Jamie. She's not the au pair. She doesn't actually care for the children.
What is her job?
Maybe she is the caretaker of the house of like, no, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Okay, but also, y'all, we don't have money, and we don't come from families with money, so, like, maybe there's a position somewhere out there that exists that we have no clue what it is.
Yeah, if y'all know, let us know, because
Right?
we don't know. And then there's Jamie, who we meet maybe the second episode, and she's the house gardener. And of course, there's Danny, and then there's the kids, Flora and Miles. Like I told you, Flora freaked me out.
I mean, yeah, it's fair.
Flora has these little dolls in this little doll house with all the little dolls who you find out are the ghosts in the house. And yeah, just creepy little girl. I never trust a little girl or an old lady in a horror movie. Because I was so in tune with Flora, totally missed Miles. Completely missed Miles.
Oh, interesting. You know, because I went in suspicious of Miles from the get-go because of the 2018 remake, who Finn Wolfhard, I believe, played Miles, and he played him like oh my god. He bordered on creep or child experiencing sexual abuse from an adult.
Ooh.
And it really, really made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I went in thinking Miles was not a good kid. That's not fair.
Right.
I went in thinking Miles was suspicious.
Right. Yeah, I totally missed that. Then we get into episode 2. Like I said, episode 1 ends with the kids locking Danny into the closet. I think they're doing this to protect her.
Yeah, to keep her from wandering about the house.
Yeah.
Because this is the second night. She wandered the house the first night.
She did. She wandered the house the first night, and I think you just see the one, the plague doctor. And he's in the house, but they keep telling her to stay in the house, stay in her room, don't go anywhere. And of course, Danny doesn't listen because she's an adult. So they lock her in the closet.
Well, I want to talk about the closet scene a little bit because they really play up the closet scene.
Yeah.
I feel like that fed into my assumption that she was unstable, that every little thing set her off.
Yes. Let's talk about the mirrors.
Yes. So when she first gets locked in the closet, she's already in full panic attack. But before the scene, you've seen her react to an image that she's consistently seeing in reflective surfaces of someone. Do you want to describe them?
If you've ever watched Sailor Moon.
From the 90s.
From the 90s. This is the American translated version that was on Cartoon Network, I think. They named the character Melvin. I am not sure what his name is in the original version, but Melvin was the nerdy kid with crazy hair and very big round glasses. And so the character that Danny sees in these reflective surfaces is just a black silhouette with glasses that light is shining through the glasses.
Yeah, like reflectively shining through.
Yeah.
But she sees him everywhere. She sees him in the very first scene you meet Danny. She sees him in a passing cab window, which makes her panic. And she covers all of the mirrors in her room, and she's in this closet. There's a mirror behind her, but she hasn't seen it yet. She's already in full-blown panic.
Yeah.
And it isn't until she turns around and sees it that she really starts
really freaking out.
She unravels.
Yeah.
She unravels. She hides the mirror as best she can without looking at it. As someone who has babysat children and who has worked with children for many years, being locked in a closet and having them be like, oh, it's, we can't open it. And like, that's definitely happened a few times in my life where like you're playing hide and seek and that's not a moment to have a meltdown over.
Right.
And she absolutely had a meltdown before seeing it.
I mean, she's screaming and crying and she's banging on the door, telling them to open it.
Which fed into my theory that something had to have happened in the classroom in America that set her off, but whatever.
And the kids are just like they open the closet like, sorry.
Yeah, we lost the key or something.
Yeah, the key was in the door, apparently. But we don't necessarily find out later. It's assumed that they're trying to protect her because she was wandering in the house the night before. In the second episode, we get some backstory on Miles, who exhibited a lot of inappropriate behavior already.
My biggest problem with him... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
My biggest problem with him was his very patronizing gendered language.
Yes.
Because he sounded like that guy that we all hate who tells you just to smile. Right?
You'd look so much prettier if you smiled.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Or the other guy that I hate who hits on you and you're at work and he hits on you and he wants your number, but he's holding up the line or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, I'm sorry, whatever. And you try to do it the customer service way. And then he comes off and he's like, dang, bitch, I didn't want your number anyway. I ain't gonna stalk you. I ain't gonna... That's basically how he reacted.
Yeah.
Ugh, Miles. I mean, not Miles. I'm sorry. But he was very problematic from the get-go.
Yes. So at one point he peeps in on Danny getting undressed because she's changing. And he addresses her by her first name rather than Miss Clayton. You know, he says Danny.
And then when she corrects him, he still says Danny.
Yeah, so we get a little backstory on him. In the present, the kids are on punishment and they're doing chores because they locked Danny in the closet. So she's given the rest of the staff the day off because the kids are going to do all the cleaning. Amongst all of that, Danny finds out that the previous au pair did in fact die by suicide. She drowned herself in the lake. Danny also thinks she sees Peter, which is the first time he comes into play. She thinks she sees him on the property. She looks back and he's gone. She tells the staff about him and they say, well, the part of the house that she saw him in, he has to go through staff in order to get there. So they know that he's not on the property. Later on, she sees a picture of him and the previous au pair. Her name is Rebecca. And she's like, this is the guy that I saw. I think it ends with her actually seeing him again through the window. Because I think that's where Miles faints.
Yeah. That's when I figured it out.
Yeah, see, I totally did not.
That's when I figured it out that he was being possessed by Peter, was when he fainted, because he looked a little spooked, too, when he saw Peter.
See, I just was like, oh, he's the ghost.
No, Nadine had it figured out from the gendered language, actually.
Oh my god, Nadine, like,
right?
He's so smart.
She was like, oh, he was holding himself differently, and the way that he, like, spoke, everything about the way he acted, and I was like, yeah, but I didn't figure that out until after I suspected he was being possessed. Ugh, nay.
I didn't figure it out until they actually went out and said it. I mean, kudos to me.
I mean, doesn't that just mean that you enjoyed it more?
Yeah. I was just like, whatever. Listen, when we get further in, you'll understand why I wasn't really paying attention to those kinds of things. So the backstory on Miles was really interesting because you find out that he was in boarding school.
Yeah, like a Catholic boarding school.
And he was really problematic there.
Not initially, though.
No, he was a good student before.
And they chalked everything up to his parents passing.
His parents, yeah. And he killed one of the priest's bird?
Yeah,
duck?
The priest's pet duck, or classroom pet.
And this is after many...
escalating
incidents, yeah, that couldn't get him back home.
Did you find out on the first day of school, he got a letter from Flora that was waiting for him, so she sent it right when he left that asked him to come home.
Yes. And so he was doing everything in his power to get home to Flora, and killing the bird finally did it. So it kind of gives you get that little empathy for him, I think, a little bit in his backstory.
Because the priest asks him, why were you acting this way in these escalating incidents recently, and why did you kill the bird? Yeah. And he told him, I was looking for the right key, which when I first heard it, I was like, that's a weird thing to say.
Right.
And you find out later, that's a discussion that Peter and him had, that when you're basically manipulating people, you look for the right key to turn the right response.
Oh, okay.
And so he was looking for the right key out of the boarding school. He looked like he regretted it, though.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely saw remorse on his face for all the things that he did, I think. But it didn't, I don't want to say it didn't matter, because at the end, it got him what he needed, was to be home to Flora to protect her. That was where I really thought of one thing. These kids were sort of prisoners of this house because they were just confined to it, but they're also sort of the protectors of the house.
Yeah, they definitely both sort of created and bought into and empowered the mythos of the house.
Yeah.
Because the little dolls were, I always want to call them tulpas. That's not what they were. They were little talismans.
Yeah, talismans.
They were little talismans that her mother had originally taught her when she was younger, that the talismans act as a way to protect you. And so Flora took that and ran with it and created talismans for all of the ghosts and all of the people as her way to protect the house. And Miles bought into that mythos too. Yeah,
there's one episode, it might be the first one, where she's already created a talisman of Danny, and Danny's walking from Miles's room to Flora's, and Flora is mimicking the actions in her little dollhouse, and just, again, it fed into my, like, creepy little girl. So, you know, it is what it is. So at the end of episode 2, for the most part, with all these episodes, they always have something major that happens right at the end.
Yeah.
And so at the very end, Miles sees Peter in the window, and you're like, holy crap, Peter is, like, I thought Peter was a ghost. I honestly thought Peter was a ghost, and he was just haunting everybody, haunting the grounds. He was the reason why this is called the Haunting of Bly Manor. And
man, you were real taken aback.
I'm telling you. I was like, oh, he's the ghost. But he was not.
I mean, he was,
but he was not the ghost. Yeah. So they see Peter in the window. Miles faints. Danny's like, that's the guy I saw earlier. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's Peter. Wait, is this Quick or Quint?
Quint.
I'm so confused with Affinity. So, they see Peter Quint, and that's how that episode ends. And we go into episode 3, where in the present time, the police have come over, they've searched the grounds, there is no Peter on the grounds. The staff, they're talking about, oh, maybe he doesn't know that Rebecca died, and he's looking for her. Mm-hmm. And there's prank calls happening at that time. They think maybe it's Peter making the calls. And we also get backstory on Peter in this episode, who he is, what he did. He actually worked for Henry, and that was
he was like his paralegal or legal assistant or something.
Because I know he had aspirations to be a Henry one day, or even better than Henry.
Yeah. Well.
We also get to see Rebecca, and she's the same way. She wants to be an aspiring lawyer, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was the whole reason why she became an au pair, because Henry asked her in the interview, why be an au pair? And she told him up front, I'm using this as my foot in the door for you to be my mentor. I'm going to prove myself.
Yeah.
Which, like, it's so much more upsetting when Peter got his claws into her.
Exactly. I think Peter saw something in her. Yeah.
Well, and Hannah puts it really well when she tells someone, I think it was either Owen or Danny, that they acted as glue traps to each other. They trapped each other in their own motives, and then they wound up getting stuck.
They both wanted to be successful. Yeah, it's very clear that, love Oliver Jackson Cohen, but Peter was just a douche.
Yes, he was definitely the epitome of because this took place in the 80s.
Yeah.
I feel like he was definitely that 80s villain who just was the toxic dickbag.
He reminds me of Patrick Bateman from American Psycho.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's who I thought of. I was like, oh god, American freaking Psycho.
Yes, because he didn't have access to the privileges of his face and everything.
Yeah.
And so he forced those privileges.
Yes.
But then he abused... anyway.
He abused his position.
He did.
He abused his influences, his looks. Yeah.
Oh, and definitely abused his influences. But I think he would have done that whether he was handsome or not.
Yeah. Because
that was his whole motive. Yeah. He used his face as a secondary step up.
I mean, he would have gotten me. I'm just saying. But yeah. So we get that story, and then we also end with Owen's mom dies. At the end of this, and so Owen has to leave.
His mom had dementia, and Owen had been a chef in training in France, in Paris. Mm-hmm. And when his mom got sick, he moved back to Bly, which is the name of the town, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the name
little
of the town.
Village, to come and take care of his mom.
And I'm just so sad.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking.
So Owen's mom dies at the end of episode 3, and we move into episode 4, which is one of my favorite episodes. We get backstory on Danny.
Finally.
Yes.
Because it definitely re-slots all of the previous reactions of hers.
Everything falls into place with her. You find out that she was engaged to...
Like
her childhood neighbor, or whatever. She did not want to get married, and she told him at a restaurant that she didn't want to get married.
Very close to their day of marriage, too, it felt like.
I think it was like right after she tried on the wedding dress or something like that.
Yeah, the day that she tried on that wedding dress with the seamstress, you could tell that she came to the realization, oh no, I'm hella gay. And that I want this woman touching me more than I want to be with this childhood friend of mine. Yeah.
So she tells him that she doesn't want to get married, and of course, toxic male energy. Which, by the way, I don't want you to think that I don't like guys, because I do. I'm just saying, like, these toxic males, they really piss me off.
Which, is another horror aspect of this thing. Yeah. Is that toxic masculinity was another ghost story in this show.
Yeah, it really was, because with Edmund, who is Danny's fiance, the whole time you think he's this very kind guy. He's kind of doing a little too much. Yeah. But he's the epitome of the guy that I hate. The quote-unquote nice guy who says he's nice, does all the nice things, but the minute something doesn't go out in his favor, he just gives you a 180. And oh god, I hate those kinds of people.
That sounds like that's a personal experience.
Listen, it surely is. It surely is, but we do not have time to go into that today. Yeah, Edmund is definitely that nice guy, and he's obviously very upset, and they're arguing in the restaurant. They're in the car, and they're still arguing.
He's acting as if he's the victim.
He is. He really is. And listen, I know I would be upset if I was in his position.
Yes, but I would not have done... I mean, he made it sound like she was ruining his life.
Yeah. And I feel like if you really care for someone, you'd want to at least listen to what they have to say.
Also, he should have been able to tell if they had known each other for that long. Yeah. She was legit struggling with the way to tell him.
Yeah.
Because she didn't even really come out to him.
No. She just said she didn't want to get married, period. She didn't give him a reason.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that he would let her give him a reason.
That's true. But he did not handle that the way a quote-unquote nice guy would have.
So disgusting. It just, anyways. So they're in the car, they're arguing, and he gets out of the car, Edmund does. And as he's getting out, a car is coming and hits him. And the last thing you see before the car hits him is the reflection of the lights on the car in his glasses. And so that puts into place that that's who has been haunting Danny this whole time. And I don't want to say that Edmund is haunting her. It's just the memory of Edmund and what happened to him.
I think it's her guilt and her relief.
And also probably some shame that came with being a member of the LGBTQ community in the 80s. You know?
Yeah. That was definitely some internalized homophobia haunting her. Because it was kind of like, oh crap, me being gay was what killed him, which is not what it was, y'all. People make their own choices.
Right.
But she also was relieved that she didn't have to go through with it. Which is like... fuck tragic, y'all. Like, you should never, ever. Ugh, whatever. I'm just...
Listen, there are so many things that we could talk about here. But
we did before.
Yeah, we would be here for days. Yeah. But to be afraid of being who you are. Ugh.
I mean, this thing was a love story, but it was also lots of different ghost stories.
Yes.
Lots of different types of way that people haunt themselves.
Yeah.
Lots of different ways that people torture other people with their own shortcomings.
Yes. So we find that out about Danny, her history, and then in the present, they have the funeral for Owen's mom. Danny chooses not to go to it. It's too soon for her to go to this funeral.
Yeah.
It brings
and
up
she tells that to Jamie.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, is reflecting the whole dress scene with the wedding dress, because Jamie's helping her get dressed.
For the funeral,
for the funeral. Zipping it up in the back.
Yeah, because she was planning on going, and then she's like, no, I can't go. And so the remainder of the episode is actually, they have a bonfire, the staff. They're paying tribute to those that they've lost. We also get a moment with Danny and Jamie, which I was super excited for. I was like, finally! And of course,
they were really cute together.
They're so cute together. But Danny sees Edmund's reflection in the greenhouse after her and Jamie kiss, and she gets spooked and she runs away. And that's where we get our first glimpse of the Lady of the Lake and her faceless ghost self and freaky, scary self.
That, in all honesty, was the only part that really freaked out Nadine. Nadine actually thought that all of the ghosts were dolls for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, like Perdita in the attic, she thought was a doll. And I was like, she's not a doll,
no.
So see, it's that Yiddish saying, you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, but you're not so smart.
Yeah.
That's us.
And so I'll leave it to you to talk about Flora's...
Flora had this amazing speech, which I believe I've talked about it before on the podcast, but I lost my mom very recently. And granted, it'll always feel like very recently. It was my mom, but she has this speech that I think probably wouldn't have hit the way it did if I hadn't lost my mom, who was our only caregiver growing up. And Flora, they're at dinner and they're having a pretty jovial time considering the death of his mom. You know, they're kind of trying to create a relaxing atmosphere. But Flora is very quiet and she turns to Owen. I always want to call him Rahul now.
I know! We just forget his character's name.
Sorry. She turns to Owen, and this is the speech that I wrote down from the scene, so if there's any copyright issues here, I apologize. But Flora says, "You're not dying, you know. When Mum and Dad died, I thought I was going to die too. I was sure of it. But then I thought, what if I was already dead? But nobody else knew I was walking around dead. Everybody could see and hear me. That was dreadful. It only felt like dying, because actually I was still alive. You have to be to feel that way. I wasn't dead. I was just really, really sad." And when I heard that, I was like, man, that's exactly what it feels like when you lose someone that close to you. Mm-hmm. You feel like you've gone with them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to experience
life.
Yeah. Because none of it feels real anymore.
Yeah.
That big part of you and that big part of your reality and the way that you experience everything around them and with them is all of a sudden gone, and you'll never have it back. And it's just like, well, I'm dead now. Like, that's it.
It's like a shock to the system, even though we all know about death, we know that it's going to happen. It's the one guarantee we all have in this life. But when it happens, I mean, it's just insane.
It is. And you know, when my mom passed, it was so sudden, considering 10 years prior, she had had a diagnosis of a malignant cancer, and she beat it. Well, she beat it in so much that it was, you know, in remission. And that they, you know, checked her up like every year or whatever to make sure it wasn't spreading, but that it was under control. The fact that it was a heat stroke that took her was just devastating, because I wasn't ready for losing her when she was first diagnosed. In fact, I went to work the next day and told my boss that they'll know my mom passed away because I'll just stop coming to work.
Oh my God.
Which wasn't like me saying that I was gonna like, you know, opt out or anything. It was just sort of, I understood that my life would halt, that I wouldn't understand how to go forward, especially as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
So when she did pass away, and it was so sudden, and it was just something as freaking dumb as heat stroke, y'all. Like, Houston, the fact that people froze to death just a week ago, not even a week ago.
No, like
just
a couple days ago, yeah.
Houston is wild.
Houston weather is so trippy.
So wild, because, I mean, heat stroke just, it was not what we were expecting. And so when it happened, and then Flora's speech, I was like, that's it. That's the experience.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I went on so long about that, but I think that Flora's speech, that Amelia B. Smith delivered it, and it's going to be with me forever.
Yeah. It was a really good speech, and I think that anyone could really relate to it, no matter who you've lost in your life. It just showed that of the two siblings, she was definitely the more mature. She was wise beyond her years. And I'm not just saying this because I thought she was creepy, because she was definitely creepy. But even with like the dolls and stuff, she was very much the older of the two, even though she was the youngest. It says a lot about her character. I think that had to have been the turning point for me with Flora when she gave that speech, because even afterwards, I definitely felt different about her. I misjudged her, which I'm happy to say I misjudged her. But yeah, it was a really good speech, and I think Owen really appreciated it too.
Yeah, it definitely took the table by surprise.
Yeah.
Because you're right, that moment of maturity took the adults by surprise.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I can only imagine being an adult and hearing my 6-year-old say something like that, and like, what?
Yeah.
So it was really a good, poignant moment, I think.
Yeah, because she ends the speech with "dead doesn't mean gone," which partly was Flora sort of admitting that she sees ghosts. And the adults around her not knowing that.
Yeah.
But then we get into the 5th episode, which we see just how much at Bly Manor dead does not mean gone.
Exactly.
Also, praise be to Tania Miller, because you, ma'am, did a phenomenal job.
Oh my God.
In everything, in every scene. Yeah. But for time's sake, we really can only bow down to you enough here in this particular episode. But know that there were definitely scenes where, shitty neighbors. There were definitely scenes where anytime she was in the chapel.
Yeah.
So
I didn't want to say it in the first episode, because I was like, we had to save it for Hannah's episode.
So now we are in the episode where we discover that Hannah has been dead the entire time.
Yeah.
From the very first moment you meet her at the well, where she's looking down a little dazedly, she's been dead the whole time. There were signs all throughout the first episode that, I mean, I was like, oh, she's dead. This is not great. She's dead. I don't know what happened. But when she's looking down in the well, she seems so disconnected from reality in that moment. And the writing was really good in that she kind of shook it off as, oh, I'm sorry, I must have been somewhere else. Which you literally were.
You're in the well.
Yeah, you're at the bottom of the well. But there were other moments, like when she was in the chapel and she was describing to Danny lighting the candles for those that have passed. And she mentions Rebecca and the parents. So there's 3 candles lit. And anytime she was turned away from the altar, the camera would zoom in and you would see 4 candles lit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, one of them is for her. she's dead too. And there's only like some perception that you see that she's acknowledged it or whatever. And when she was looking at the altar, she only saw 3.
And then she doesn't drink or eat in the episodes
she
at
never
all.
drinks or eats.
No.
And at first you thought that the not drinking was just because Danny is bad at making tea.
Yeah, because Danny's struggling with making English British tea, and obviously as American. At one point she says, like, my tea, I'm used to having ice and sugar.
Yeah, you know, got sweet tea down here.
Yeah, so I just put it off as, oh yeah, she's not gonna drink Danny's tea, because why would she drink an American preparing tea?
When I noticed the very first time she didn't eat, I remember thinking, that's weird, because she doesn't seem like she's on bad terms with Owen. I mean, he's a chef.
Yeah.
So why would she not eat? And I was like, oh, it's because she's dead.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to eat. She also, whenever she would answer, because they would go, oh, are you not going to have dinner? And she would kind of distantly reply, oh, I ate earlier, but as if she was questioning herself. Nadine thought that she was a witch, or that, I don't know, Nadine had a lot of weird theories about Anna, and none of, and like they all got weirder and weirder, and I was like, the most obvious one is that she's dead, and you were nowhere near them, Nadine.
I just love her, the fact that she had so many theories. Listen, I'm going to talk from a place of motherhood. I was just like, oh, she has no time to eat because she's looking after 2 kids. I have one, and sometimes I eat at midnight. Sometimes I don't eat at all. So I wrote it off. I made excuses.
No, Nadine thought she was a witch or something. And then I was like, but Nadine, what about the crack that she was seeing everywhere?
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, the crack was obviously a sign too. And the crack is, you know, you find out later, the crack is in the well.
Yeah.
That was the last thing she saw when she fell down it.
So episode 5, of course, we get Hannah's story, but we also see a lot of flashbacks.
Oh yeah, because she caught Peter and Rebecca in bed together a few times.
we get a lot of Peter flashbacks with his mother, which shows that he comes from a history of bad people.
Yeah, he comes from a history of not only abusers, but manipulators. Con artists, scammers?
Con artists, like because his mom was one, and his mom was like, oh, well, you work at this law firm now, like, you can get some stuff for us, and, you know, so he's definitely in the cycle. He's not the one that's breaking the cycle.
No. Well, and it sounds like they turned on each other a lot, even in their little household.
Yes.
Because he was like, oh, are you back with him, his father?
Yeah.
And did he tell you to do this? Did he tell you to come and, like, beg me for money or whatever? They very clearly were, in a way, a very cannibalistic family. Yeah. But they preyed upon each other, which is disgusting.
Yeah. And if memory serves me correctly, the kids catch him in the middle of the night one night, and I think that's the night he's planning to make his move for him and Rebecca to escape to America.
Because they were in bed together, and he was trying to sell her on this idea of, I'll be a baron and you'll be a princess.
Yeah.
Because Americans don't know one foreigner from another, I guess.
Right.
Which is like, I mean, I guess it's accurate.
And it's funny because when he's talking about that, I'm like, wait, this is not my Victorian, my Regency romance novels where America is brand new to Europeans. This is the 80s, so like
let's be honest, he could probably pull off that shit like today.
I mean, for real, but I was just like, I remember thinking like, wait, this is not a Regency romance. Like, America has been established and colonized for many years at this point, so I don't understand. But anyways, the kids intercept him, and they're also trying to protect Peter as well. This is where we find out how Peter died. Peter is actually dead. The Lady of the Lake took him. And man, was that, listen, there was no blood, there was no gore, but that was one of the scariest freaking scenes I've ever seen in my life.
Yes. And it wasn't just that she was faceless.
Yeah.
It was the strength and the quickness that she took him.
Yeah. Yeah.
That scared the crap out of me.
She did it so fast. And you were just like, wait, what?
And his struggling did not throw her off her step.
No.
There was no, all of it scared the crap out of me.
So scary. So that's how episode 5 ends. Episode 6 goes into the history of Flora and Miles's parents. And we actually find out that Henry was dabbling in the marriage and having an affair with Flora's mom. And Henry is actually Flora's biological father, not his brother, who was married to...
Yeah, he's not Uncle Henry to Flora. But you know, they kind of gave away in an earlier episode.
I think so.
Because Flora was talking about a boy she saw in her room that scared her. And Rebecca, the faceless boy, Henry was like, oh, you know, when I was younger, when I was your age, I had imaginary friends too. I had a soldier that was my friend. And it was that moment that I was like, wait, what? This is hereditary? I didn't figure out that he was her father.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that one, I was like, what?
Yeah. Although it makes a lot of sense because this entire time, y'all, Henry has been absent. And not only has he been absent, but from the very beginning when things were going bad, like when they thought Peter being alive was creeping back onto the premises and had all these bad intentions, looking for Rebecca, whatever, they called the cops and they called Henry. And he was like, handle it. You called the cops, you're fine.
And there were other times when Flora was sick and Danny called and he's just like, deal with it.
Yeah. He's like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Which...
Listen, he was busy drinking is what he was busy doing because he wasn't doing anything. Like, they show him he's just drinking. But anyway, so he has an affair and Flora's born and the dad figures out what's going on. He figures out about the affair. But they decide to go ahead and give their marriage a try. They ban Henry from being around them and the kids. And then they go off to India to sort of reconnect.
I think they were following their honeymoon route.
They actually get into an accident and they die there. And so you get all of that backstory. But also we get in the present day time, Flora is dream hopping. Mm-hmm. She doesn't like it. And you see that we already know that Miles is being possessed by Peter, but we didn't realize that Rebecca has been possessing Flora.
I mean, we didn't, but Nadine did.
Well... Yeah. So when this happened and we saw that Rebecca was possessing Flora did not like it.
She called it being tucked in?
Yeah.
Or tucked away.
Tucked away, yeah. And it was kind of sad. It took me back to some Law and Order episodes where the kids are the victims and, you know, just kind of heartbreaking and sad and like kind of want to protect Flora.
There's very standard language and body language and actions of children that are being abused by the adults that are their caregivers or authority figures. And even though there's no agreed upon way to express this in children, it's just that they have such limited resources and such limited language to express to the adults around them, this is what's happening. So they all wind up expressing it in the same way. So that's how I knew that the 2018 movie, that was how I knew or assumed Finn Wolfhard's character was being abused, because he said and did things that I would turn to him and I was like, no, he was being sexually abused or abused in some manner.
Yeah, when Flora said, I don't want to be tucked in anymore, tucked away anymore, I just, oh my God, I wanted to grab her and just bring her home and just be like, oh my God, you're okay, you know, because it was really sad.
Yeah. And also, guys, pay attention to the language the kids in your care are giving you, especially when they start using phrases that seem a little, because that was another thing. Miles used the phrase, looking for the right key. Flora used the phrase, everything was perfectly splendid. So they repeat phrases that their abusers have kind of fed them.
Yeah.
Y'all just
pay attention to those kiddos.
Exactly. Pay attention. Like, kids are smart. They're aware, but they're still fed information that they reflect when they're being abused.
It was really sad. So that episode ends with Flora, she's actually talking to Rebecca. Peter is there and she's telling them she doesn't want to do this anymore. And Danny walks in on this conversation and Danny sees Peter, Danny sees Rebecca and Flora, and Danny's like, what?
Yeah, that had to have been the most awkward thing to come into in that house. Like, two people you know are alive, one you think may be alive, one you know absolutely is dead.
Yeah.
And they're just like chilling out in the attic.
Yeah, and so I think she's actually trying to get Flora away to leave when when Danny's hit on the head, you find out that Miles hit her on the head. And I think Peter had possessed Miles at that point. So that's how episode 6 ends, and we go just straight into episode 7. We find out that Peter's whole plan is he's realized that he can possess people, but that his specific spirit is stuck at Bly Manor. And so in order for him to get out of Bly Manor, he needs to possess someone's body.
He thinks,
yeah.
Because there's actually no proof that that's going to work.
No, he's just going by a hunch.
Yeah.
He's convinced Rebecca at this point that they need to be together.
Oh, because he's such a coward.
He's such a coward.
He doesn't want to be by himself. He's scared.
Yes, this should have been played by an ugly man so I could be really angry because I was so mad. He convinces Rebecca that they need to be together and that this is the only way for them to be together, and he doesn't actually give her specifics, and so he possesses her and then kills her by walking into the lake,
but leaves her at the moment of death.
Yeah,
so she has to actually drown by herself.
Yeah, he's
what a coward.
Ugh. And so now that she's dead, he's convincing her that they can both possess these little kids and go about their way.
Well, and escape the grounds.
Escape the grounds, yes. That's his plan in the present time. Danny is tied up in the attic. The kids are kind of arguing with the grown-ups.
Well, you know, I think that at some points, too, Peter seemed like he was, and we're about to get to this point, but there's moments where Peter lost time even as a ghost because the spirits of the household that are stuck there, the different dolls that are represented represented by Flora's dolls, they're losing themselves. They're losing time. They're losing memories. They get stuck in these little memory hops and dream jumps and stuff like that. And I think that Peter's already degrading.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that he hears Hannah coming to discover them and their plans.
That's when we realize that Rebecca has been playing Peter the whole time, and she doesn't really want any part of this. So Rebecca and Flora help Dani escape. Dani is like running away with Flora to just escape Bly Manor and get her to safety when she's intercepted by the Lady of the Lake.
Yeah, that was, not as scary as when she got Peter.
No, but it was still like...
Yeah, I think that as she was running towards the pond or the end of the drive, I remember thinking, oh no, this timing-wise is not going to work out well. But the thing with Peter, you just didn't see coming.
Yeah. With Dani, I think it played into that horror trope where you think you've made it to the end, and you were so close, but not quite.
Like that very Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
You've already been tortured, you've already gone through all these terrible things, nothing worse can happen because you're finally escaping and leaving.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh no, the bad guy was also there.
Yeah. So it was definitely much that trope. My absolute favorite episode by far is episode 8, which is where we get the history of the Lady of the Lake. I don't think we see Dani or any of the main characters in this episode. It's literally just Viola and
Perdita,
who are the original, they're not the owners, but the original
inheritors.
Inheritors of Bly Manor. And we find out that Viola, the older sister, Viola, always
that's right, Viola is a thing, but it's an instrument,
right? Every time
I mean, we want to say Peter Quick, we want to say Perdita, which I don't know why.
I don't know, that came out of nowhere, the Perdita thing. I'm gonna say it now. Anyways, so Viola she has plans for Bly Manor. Their dad dies, and because they're females, they cannot inherit the house. It has to go to a male, so she plans to get this distant cousin, marry him, and keep the house and the family that way. It's very clear she's a very strong character, and Perdita, she's equally strong, but I want to say she's like a quiet strong.
I think that she's strong, but she's in the shadow of Viola.
Right. I think it's as they get to know Arthur, who I think his name is.
You know what? That would make sense, because in Affinity, Oh
my gosh, yeah.
Right? There was an Arthur in Affinity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So as they get to know Arthur, Perdita and Arthur actually kind of have an emotional connection, but again, Viola, being the strong female she is, marries him, they have a child, and that's where Viola experiences true love, I think, for the very first time. Like, she loved her sister, she loved her dad, she probably loved her husband, but when with her daughter, it was just a completely different love.
Yeah.
And no sooner than she gives birth, Viola becomes sick. I think she had
TB, for
TB,
sure.
Yeah.
Because
that's where the plague doctor comes in.
They thought it was the plague.
Yeah.
But it was TB, which is tuberculosis.
Yeah.
Or consumption. They call in a priest, and they give the last rites, because she's... Consumption, it really does start to wear her down really fast, and so the priest comes in and gives her the last rites. But this is the moment where you see that Perdita recognized her sister was the shadow she was in, because there's a comment made in that scene where she's like, basically, God in heaven, we're like, okay, we're ready to accept you, and Viola was like, no thanks.
Yeah.
This is my house, this is my daughter, I'm gonna be here, but thank you, no thanks.
Which I love Viola for that.
Right.
I really do. But anyway, her health worsens because they just got her locked in a room. She's not doing anything. Eventually, Perdita, she rises to power. She obviously has Arthur to herself. She's raising Isabel, who is Viola's daughter. She is essentially the lady of the house now. Yeah. She's having to run everything. And Viola is not happy about this at all.
No.
She comes out with her decrepit looking self.
Well, and they also kind of showed that before Viola had Isabel, that all Viola seemed to put merit into was the lifestyle that they led.
Yeah.
The house, the land, the things that she couldn't actually legally own, but that she could parade. So dresses, finery, jewels, the house, the land, everything. Her image was very important to her. And like you said, she didn't actually experience true love until she had Isabel.
Right. And this whole time, she's not allowed to see her daughter either.
Yeah.
Which, you're not going to tell me. You are not going to tell me that I cannot see my kid. I don't know, you're gonna mask her up or something. You're gonna do something with her so I can see my baby. But Viola is very upset with everything that's happening. I think she knows that she could heal from this.
But she couldn't, though, because
she
assumed she could.
What was the cure for it back then? Was it like being out in the sun?
It was being out in the sun and like bloodletting.
Yeah.
So like,
did they do that to her?
Oh,
I wonder if they did. Did they?
I think they did, because
I feel like
the plague doctor was a freaking quack.
Yeah. But yeah, Viola being as confident as she was.
That's true. That's true. She was like, I told God in heaven no thank you, so I'm going to tell TV no thank you.
So yeah.
Which, in all fairness, she had already beat TV for like quite a number of years.
Exactly, because they gave her only a couple of months, I think, and she was 6 years in or whatever. Like,
yeah. So granted, maybe she did have like some foundation to stand on.
She was just stubborn.
Yeah,
that's just all that it was. She was just real stubborn. Eventually, Perdita just gets really just annoyed, and she smothers her sister. And before Viola died, she put all of her fine clothes and jewelries into a trunk, and she told Arthur that's for her daughter when she becomes of age. It's her inheritance for her daughter.
Yeah, like basically the only thing she could legally pass on to her daughter.
Right. And I think it meant a lot to her to be able to, from woman to woman, pass on something to her daughter. So she dies, but
she's murdered.
She's murdered, yes. And she's not going nowhere. She's staying in the house, ghost and all.
Yeah, that is her house.
Yeah, that's her house.
That is her child.
So she inhabits the trunk, her daughter's trunk, with the hopes that one day she'll get to see her daughter when she opens the trunk and, you know, put on her clothes and everything.
Which is like kind of, it's such a romanticized version of motherhood. It's kind of sweet, but it's also, I mean, it was also it was not good. You know, like it was, like there's a part of it where I was watching, because in the trunk, she woke up, she would sleep, she would wake up, she'd kind of explore the little space that she had, and then get bored and go to sleep and wake up and do it over. And all she had that kept her going was the knowledge that the next time the door was open to this little room she was in, it would be her daughter, and she would see her daughter's face again. And I was like, oh, that is so sweet. And like, okay, but it's also not healthy.
Right. It's not healthy.
You know, like I think that for as taken in as M was by Peter's character, I think I was suckered in by Viola's motherhood.
Listen, I kept thinking like, oh, I need to make a chest for my daughter and give it to her with all of my jewelry. I was fully on board with, and it's borderline obsessive what she did, you know, very, very obsessive. But it's just that nurturing side of you that's like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like that reconnection. I don't know. I was fully on board.
We're not excusing
it, no.
But we do, on some level, understand it.
Yes, I wholeheartedly understand it. Especially since she didn't see her daughter before she died. You know what I mean? Like, she just didn't see her. But after she's murdered, and of course, she's still in the chest, Bly Manor, Arthur, and Perdita fall on hard times.
Apparently, Arthur has not made good investments.
Right. Which I'm guessing Viola kept up with all that stuff.
Oh, she did.
Obviously.
When Arthur first comes to the estate, he meets Perdita first.
Yeah.
Because Viola was out collecting rent.
So he doesn't know how to do that stuff.
Yeah, apparently he's not. Whatever.
She chose him for a reason.
Right. She chose him for a reason, and she got what she wanted out of him, but he was fairly useless otherwise.
Yeah.
That's not fair. He was actually a pretty good dad.
I mean, he was a good dad.
And he definitely did not let Perdita talk him into selling the trunk of Refinery.
Yeah. And she really wanted to. She just kept saying, like, this is gonna save us. I don't know why you won't. And I think for
she
Perdita,
kind of emasculated him for it, too.
Yeah.
She was like, everything that we're going through is your fault, and you have our saving grace under this promise you made to a dead woman.
Exactly.
Yeah. And she made him feel pretty shitty about it, which started to back the fuck off, you...
I know! Like, it's so funny because you kind of feel sad for Perdita when you see how much she really likes Arthur. You see Viola marrying him, and you're like, oh, poor sister. And then I'm like, girl, like, chill out a little bit. But anyways, Perdita ignores Arthur's request, ignores Viola's dying wish, and she goes to open the trunk. And
damn.
Man, she's met with some violence.
Well, and some rage, too, because first you see her opening the trunk from her point of view, which was scary, because then all you see is this dress, this headless dress, rise up with arms sticking through it and strangles her to death, and then, like, refolds itself back into the trunk. And you're like, what the fuck was that?
I know!
And then you see it from Viola's side, which is
Yeah.
she hears the lock turning in the door of the trunk, and she doesn't know how much time has passed.
Yeah.
For her, it feels like much longer than what it actually was. And she's so ecstatic that she gets to see her child again.
I know.
And to see the face of the woman who not only betrayed her, but then murdered her as well. She assumes taking the things that were meant for her daughter.
Yeah.
She loses her absolute mind, y'all. Like, completely. And she strangles her sister Perdita to death.
Yes.
Which was less frightening from her point of view. Because you kind of get all that rage, that very righteous rage.
Yeah. Perdita's dead in the attic.
Yeah. Arthur and Isabel come home to quite an unfortunate scene. Which, by the way, Arthur is so dumb.
He's so dumb.
He okay, y'all, picture coming home to an empty house and you find the body of the person you live with in the attic, just kind of like passed out, fallen over with the trunk open.
Yeah.
Is your first thought, oh, the trunk killed her because it's cursed? Or is your first thought, oh, she got overheated because she's wearing a corset? Or she just had, I don't know, an aneurysm, y'all. Like a trunk. So he throws the trunk of all of the refinery that was meant to go to his daughter in the lake.
Yep, and Viola with it.
Yeah.
And him and Isabel leave. And they leave Perdita up there, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Not only do they leave Perdita, but Viola's now at the bottom of the lake and has no clue that she's been left behind.
Yeah. She becomes the lady of the lake.
Well, because she obsessively still thinks that she's looking for her daughter.
Yeah. And she comes out and she walks the house looking for her daughter. And you kind of see that the ghost that you don't see a lot of ghosts in Bly Manor as you did in Hill House.
That's true.
In Bly Manor, they were very strategic about the ghosts that you did see. And the ghosts that you saw, they were all featured along the story somewhere.
Yeah. Like the plague doctor, the priest. I mean, Viola took everyone. Oh, right. The priest came because the new owners of the house, after Arthur and Isabel left, thought that the house had a demon or something and needed to be exorcised.
Yeah.
So the priest came to exorcise the house and Viola took him instead.
Yeah, so as she's walking through the house at night looking for her daughter, she sees someone, she's taking you.
Yeah.
Or if you're in her path.
If you're in her path.
Yeah, if you're in her path, she's going to take you. Which is what happened with Peter. He was in her path, and so that's why he got taken.
And she does not let go.
No, she doesn't
She
let
takes
go.
you to the bottom of the lake.
She did take a little child.
Yes. That scene was really sad because the way that the narrator, Carla Gugino, sold it was that she comes to the bed and she sees a small child, but after so long, being in the lake and being isolated has kind of washed her memory away, has kind of washed away her persona.
Yeah.
So all she has now is her obsessive desire to see her child again, but she can't remember what her child looked like.
Yeah.
That her child was not a male. And so she just sees a child lying in bed and is like, well, this is clearly mine. Picks up the child and takes him to the lake with her.
Right, and she's very motherly, holding him against her shoulder.
Cradling
and,
him. And it's just...
the narrator talks about, the memory fades as time goes on, along with their faces.
Yeah. She likened it to the river stones.
Yeah.
That water just kind of smooths away a stone.
Yeah.
Over time. Side note, y'all, I don't know how people view spirits. I've always had this assumption that malevolent ghosts and malevolent spirits are not necessarily malevolent to begin with. I think that what happens is that you stick around for so long that you do start to lose sight of what you had in life and you begin to obsess on what you have in death. And so spirits that were good people and good spirits to begin with deteriorate over time. Yeah. And that's clearly what's happening in the house. All the spirits that you see, well, I guess Perdita's the only one you really see like Viola with the face washed away and the boy.
And the boy, yeah.
Because the plague doctor had his face mask on.
He had his mask on, so we didn't see him. And for the most part, the rest of them were kind of in the dark, so you didn't really see anything.
Yeah, they keep to themselves, which, fair. They were all murdered by this, very frightening ghost, so they all kind of keep to themselves in these corners, and they're very afraid.
And because Rebecca and Peter are so new, they still have faces, as does Hannah. And that's the end of episode 8, which that was a long description, but it was worth it. Because it was one of my favorite episodes. It was really creepy, though.
Yes. But it revealed a lot. And it revealed a lot of the motives for the hauntings and sort of what created this haunted land.
Yeah. You sort of find out the source of all this is Viola.
Yeah. I think the narrator, Carla Gugino, describes her as a well or something pulling this focal point that everybody is stuck, this gravitational pull to Viola.
Yeah.
And that until Viola lets go of the land, that everyone is stuck with her in her suffering. It's really sad, but it's also
so
really, like, so scary.
It's so scary.
Because she's just gonna get worse.
Yeah, she's only gonna get worse. Listen, what she did to Peter was scary.
Yes.
So, as you can tell, episode 8 was all backstory. So, episode 9, which is the very last episode, we get back to where Viola has taken Danny. She's dragging her down to the lake when Flora intervenes and, like, take me instead.
Flora is, like, the real hero of this story.
I know!
I mean, she's not. Danny, like, does come through at the end, but Flora's a badass.
Yeah, to be able to sacrifice herself, oh my gosh.
And now that I think about it, all the women.
Yeah,
like,
all of the women.
Yeah,
like,
we're
this one
super
was
strong, except for Perdita, but she definitely had her own little motives. But all the women, like, come through as heroes.
They do. They really do. Even Rebecca, like, in her own way, she comes through.
Yeah, she becomes the hero of her own story at the end. She saves herself.
Yeah.
Okay. You okay?
No, that was me.
Oh. I'm blaming Chainsaw for no reason.
So yeah, Flora intervenes, but Danny's like, no. She saves Flora, and then she recites a line
it's you,
Viola.
Yeah, so Viola, when she first gave birth to Isabel, and she was holding her, she was, experiencing true love for the first time, and she held Isabel, and she said, it's you, it's me, it's us.
Yeah.
And that was her driving nature for life and afterlife.
And so it kind of comes to Danny out of nowhere, and she says that to Viola, and she takes in Viola's spirit at that point, breaks the curse at Bly Manor, because she has successfully been possessed by Viola, in my opinion. And she breaks the curse at Bly Manor. All the ghosts are free, I guess, to move on.
Yeah, because you don't see Hannah again.
No, because I think at that point, Owen and Jamie find Hannah in the well.
That was so heartbreaking.
Oh my god,
Y'all,
it's so heartbreaking.
Owen was so in love with Hannah.
Oh my, we didn't even touch on that.
I know, and that was another love story, because there were times that you knew that Owen was just head over heels for her, and Hannah had been heartbroken beforehand by her husband, who had run off with someone younger and left her, and she, for a little while, I think, held out hope that he would come to his senses and come back to her, because they were, married. Like, okay. The fact that Owen was also, like, younger than her, and he wasn't subtle either.
Yeah.
He was so sweetly in love with her, and it was heartbreaking, because at the bonfire a few episodes back, he asked her to come with him to France. He was like, my mom's not here anymore. I have no reason to stay here in Bly, and I think I'm just gonna go back to France, and you should come with me. And she kind of laughs it off or whatever, and she's like, no, like, you don't want me, tagging along and dragging you down. He really does. And I remember thinking, because I knew that Hannah was dead, I remember thinking, like, just go, like, dig up a piece of the well and, like, take the piece of the well with you, and then Hannah can be with you, and then you can sort of have a happily ever after. And
it was really heartbreaking in that episode too, because she's flashing back between several scenes, and she flashes continuously back to the bonfire and him asking her to go to Paris. And the very last scene, she's like, yes, I'll go with you, but he's already, like, walking away from her, and it's just really heartbreaking.
Well, and Owen is also how she works out through her memories that she is dead, because she keeps going back to the very first time she met him. It was when she interviewed him for his position, and you could kind of tell she was already a little smitten with him, because Owen is very funny. He is so dorky. He makes the worst cooking and baking puns in the world, but, like, in that way that you're just, oh my god, I would marry you for that, like, alone. Like, that alone was just so,
he's so wholesome.
Yes.
So
like, you want a real nice guy? It was not Peter.
No.
Owen was, honestly,
pure
like,
heart.
It was also not Edmund.
No.
Like, in any way.
No.
Owen was the only one who was genuinely that good guy.
My heart just broke for him and Hannah.
Right? Like, they deserved to have a happy ending, and they didn't get it, and it was just...
Well, that was like in Hill House with Nell. She deserved better, and she sacrificed herself for her family, which... Danny did the same too in Bly Manor. Episode 9, she's possessed by Viola, but she still maintains a life afterwards. Her and Jamie are officially together. They get married.
Well, I don't think they get married because they're not allowed to, but they, like, move in together, and they exchange rings.
Yeah, they exchange rings.
Which is still, like...
Of course, it's the 80s, 90s, whatever.
Right. It was sweet, the gesture, but, I mean, y'all... Okay, the struggle is still very real for the LGBTQIA community, but for people who judge the reactions from the 90s and the 80s, like, don't realize how good y'all have it now. Like, it was a long road. and there is still so much to walk and fight for. To be able to exchange rings openly and wear them around, even in the neighborhood, that meant that in the neighborhood they went from, oh, those kooky girls who are roommates, to like, no, there's rings on their fingers and there's not men around. That's a bit of a scandal. And they still did it. That was super brave.
Yeah, so brave of them to be out and about. Because I think they wore it when they were working, because they had a little floral shop.
Right, they owned a business together, which like, yeah, you can push the friends, scenario so far.
The roommates.
The roommates and the, what are they,
I have a lot of issues with all that stuff.
The roommates, and what are they, the spinsters? Yeah. The spinsters that have lived together to have a double income or whatever. Like, you can push that scenario only so far in denial.
We're talking about Bly Manor, okay? Yes. Just listen. All that nonsense. It's just nonsense too. Like, I just understand how you can't be who you want to be.
And all it is an expression of love.
You're not hurting anyone. You're not hurting anybody.
Yeah. If you're not hurting yourself and you're not hurting others, and it's an expression of
genuine love.
Yeah, genuine love, not disordered love, which was like what Peter and Rebecca had.
It's just mind-boggling to me. We could really talk about it all day, and one day we will. Right. So yeah, Jamie and Danny, they move on and they live their life. Henry actually comes and gets the kids, and the kids conveniently forget about all the ghosts.
I think part of it was that with Viola gone, that kids do what kids do really well, which is kind of gloss over the trauma. I mean, that's what therapy is for, y'all.
Yes. So yeah, the kids forgot about it. But as the years go by, Danny is very much aware. Danny has never forgotten that Viola has possessed her. And it's made very clear to us that she still is looking for Viola in the reflections of like the bathwater, the sink, just all the
lots
water.
Of water.
Yeah. So Danny, for fear that Viola is going to return and harm Jamie, she actually leaves Jamie, returns to Bly Manor, and drowns herself in the lake, thereby becoming her version of the Lady of the Lake, sworn to protect Bly Manor. It's so sad, because like Jamie was always, it is what it is, whatever happens between us is what happens between us.
Yeah, what time we have is what time we have.
And and you see that throughout the years she really grew attached to Danny, and she was so supportive of Danny, and then to see Danny just go, just kind of like...
Well, and I think that Jamie genuinely thought that their love could be stronger than Viola's obsession, and I think that maybe Danny wasn't strong enough. She was a very strong person, but she was still... I think that she still carried too much maybe guilt. I think that if what had happened with Edmund had never happened, she could have been stronger than Viola until the day she died.
I think so.
But because she had this history of repression and this history of guilt and relief and everything tied in and garbled up with Edmund, it put a crack in her armor against Viola, who had much longer time to cultivate her obsessive love than Danny did.
I think Danny didn't realize that with Jamie she could have been strong enough to keep Viola at bay until she died. And I think Jamie knew that as well. And so we end Bly Manor actually with the wedding. And you find out that the wedding is actually Flora's wedding.
Yeah, it's the very, very beginning, because I don't think we talked about it in the beginning of the episode, but the very first episode, Carla Gugino's character, the storyteller, who's been narrating this whole time, was
she was at the rehearsal dinner.
Right.
So I think she was invited as a guest, maybe by Owen, because I know that she sees older Owen there. So yeah, we see older Owen, we see older Miles and Henry and Flora.
I think older Flora also suspected the ghost story the whole time was about them, because she mentions it when everybody else sort of walks away from the end of the ghost story. And she goes, I had a summer house that was very similar to the one you discussed, but it had a different name. How weird is that? And older Jamie was like, how strange.
It's really funny because, like, listen, we didn't talk about it, but Jamie was she had a very dry sense of humor throughout the whole series, and I appreciated it, because sometimes my humor is a little dry. People are just like, I don't get you, but I got her.
Also, we find out at some point in the series that Jamie comes from a very similar background as Peter.
Oh, right.
Yeah, her family had a lot of drama and had a lot of substance abuse and things like that. And spoiler alert, guys, you can grow up with that background and not be a dick. You can break a cycle.
You sure can. Oh my God. And I'm not going to say that it's easy. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it takes a lot of help from outside people like therapists. But you can definitely do it.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
you can break a cycle. Let's be clear. You don't have to use your history of being abused as an excuse to continue to abuse others.
Yeah.
You all make choices. In fact, that kind of goes back to a scene with Miles between him and the priest, because in class, they discuss the parable of the demon pigs from the Bible. And Miles asks him some follow-up questions about it. And the priest says, yes, because as humans, we are not compelled.
Yeah.
You are not compelled to continue an abusive cycle in any way. I just wanted to get that out there because I feel like that was a very strong message.
You know, each character in their own sense, they had a choice that they had to make that really defined where they went in the path of the story, right? Because Peter could have made a choice to not steal from the family. And if he had made that choice, maybe he wouldn't have died.
He already had his foot in the door.
Yeah.
Rebecca had to become an au pair to get her foot in the door. And even then, she still didn't really have her foot in the door. She was an au pair.
Exactly. She wasn't getting actual experience.
No. So, like, Peter just... Anyway, abuse is abuse, y'all. I'm not saying that you don't suffer. I get it. But you can also be an adult and a human being and break a cycle because we are not compelled.
You can make the choice. It's a tough choice to make. I'm not taking anything away from it. It's a very tough choice to make.
And you do need a support system, even if that support system is your own drive, like Viola.
Yeah. Listen, honey,
she knew what she wanted and she was gonna get it.
I know a lot of parents can say this. The strongest drive for anyone is that of your kids. I never thought that listen, I'm in my late 30s. I am a single parent. I work full time and I go to school part time. And I don't know how I do it. I really don't.
Girl, I don't know how you do it now because I told myself no more after 30.
Yeah.
I was like burning it both ends, but by 30, you better be done.
I don't understand how I do it and I'm starting from scratch, but the greatest motivator is what you make it. You know, my biggest motivator is my kid. I wanted to see a successful person. You know, you do what you gotta do.
I get that it can feel like it's a struggle.
It's a struggle.
But there are support systems out there. You just gotta
find them.
You gotta be willing to find them and to not use your abuse as an excuse.
Yeah. And if you don't know, contact your local library because they'll help you. Unlike Hill House, this didn't have a lot of the psychological backgrounds that I really enjoyed from Hill House. This one had a lot of your choice kind of defines your path almost. And I really loved it as a love story, as many love stories. When you look at it as people haunting themselves, it was really, really good.
Yeah, for the big bad ghost that Viola was, there was definitely a lot more of the people doing damage to themselves, wasn't there?
Yeah. I would actually advise you to read Affinity afterwards too and see what you think about the two.
I think that's it, because I think that the only other thing that I really wanted to discuss were things that I kind of interjected. I have definitely been an interrupting chicken.
I've said everything that I wanted to say. Again, Victoria Pedretti, great job.
I do have a couple of things that I asked myself at the end of the series, which was, do you do more harm not letting go of grief? Do you harm yourself and the dead watching over you by not letting go of your grief? Do you move on or forward just as much for yourself as those who passed away? In the instance of the kids, they moved on, they forgot, and that was clearly the best option for them.
Yeah.
Jamie let go and she moved on, but she still grieved.
Yeah, because I think towards the end, she was still looking for Danny again in the reflections, hoping that Danny would come to visit her, just like Danny was looking for Viola. You know what? This show really handled grief in a way I didn't anticipate. Now that you're saying it, I didn't really think about it, but yeah, it did handle grief a lot.
Yeah, and lots of different variations of grief.
It was very well done.
We hope that you guys enjoyed the discussion, but I hope that for those of you who like Jennifer on the first watch, because I think that, I can't remember who it is at the branch, but somebody at the branch was saying that they didn't even make it past the first few episodes. Yeah, because they had figured out what the whole story was by then. Yeah. And they didn't feel like it was an investment worthy of their time. Rethink that. Yeah. Go back in looking for horror is more than just death, which is Taylor's favorite thing that we've said, but horror is more than just death, and gore. Horror is a message. It is a literary message, just like everything else. It's there to teach us a lesson. You just have to be willing to, well, don't overanalyze like me, but...
And don't underanalyze like me. Get a good medium between the two of us.
Yeah, I guess be like Nay, who had it all figured out in the first episode, but still watched it.
Yeah. Just give it a chance.
Yeah.
I think that's all that we want to say. Just give it a chance. Horror deserves that.
Yeah, it really does. And we will hopefully not have to record this again.
I
know. Maybe I'll start editing it right away just to avoid that. But we will see you guys again next time with Lovecraft Country.
I think so.
I hope you guys are ready. That one, oof.
We're going to be on our soapbox quite often, so just be prepared. We've got some thoughts.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy it.
Bye.
Bye. If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryontheleft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryonTheLeft.com.